Good afternoon. Today we're going to be working on a composite image of a moonlight silhouette, like the one I have shown here. This image is composed of several different images, including a starry background, a moon image, a dog, some grass that's been painted in with a custom grass brush, a silhouetted girl on a rope swing that we will draw in using vectors and then rasterized paths. We're also going to render a tree from scratch and as well just learn a few other tips and tricks in Photoshop as we go. So let's get started. I'm going to open up Photoshop, go to File, New, and create a new custom sized document. I want my document to be in pixels, so first thing I'll do is I'll make sure that's set in pixels. I want the width to be set to 3000 pixels, and I want the height to be 2000 pixels. So it's going to be wider than it is tall. I also want to set my resolution to 300 pixels per inch and have a white background. So I'll click Create. Now that we've got started, I'm going to unlock the background by clicking on the lock on the background layer. I just have to single click it. And then I can double click on the word Layer 0, double click, and type in background. Okay. And on that background layer, I'm going to add a layer style and a gradient overlay. So I'm going to go to Layer, Layer Style, and I'm adding a gradient overlay. So it's Layer, Layer Style, Gradient Overlay. And in this gradient overlay, I'm going to choose some colors that would be appropriate for the evening sky. And I just think it's easiest if you pick this red to green transition. It's got two simple colors. And then once you've clicked on that, once you've selected it, click on the gradient to bring up the gradient editor dialog box. Now on my red color, I'm going to change that to a light blue or a medium sky blue, maybe even a little darker actually, something in here. And I'm going to click OK, and then I'm going to change my green color, double click on that icon and change that to like a purple, dark purple. Yeah, something like that. And that looks okay, looks pretty good. I'm going to click OK, and I've got my colors. So now I'm going to create a black rectangle for the ground, so I'm going to need to switch to my rectangle tool. If you can't find this rectangle tool, it might look like a custom shape tool. Look for one of these ellipse or rounded rectangles. So you want the regular square rectangle. I want to make sure that my default colors are set, so I can push D to make sure that it's black and white. And then I'm just going to click about 1/8 of the bottom of the screen and create a black rectangle. It doesn't matter if I go off the edges a little bit. I just want to make sure that I have covered right to the edges. All right. Now I'm going to label this new created layer as Horizon, H-O-R-I-Z-O-N. And hit enter. So that's my horizon. I'm going to create a new layer by clicking my new layer button and label this one tree. I'm going to double click it and call it tree. Enter. I'm going up to filter and down to render and tree. So filter, render, tree on my tree layer. Once I'm going to have my dialog box pop up here. You can choose different trees depending on what you want to render. Some of these trees will work better than others. So I'm going to choose an elm tree. And I'm going to set my light direction to 0. I'm going to change my leaves amount to, I think about 30 is good. I'm going to set my leaf size around 90 is pretty good. Branches height to 215 is perfect. 220, yeah, 215 I think is perfect. And then my branch thickness can stay at 130. That looks good. All right, I'm going to, there's different arrangements you can have. So I'm going to look, I like the one at 4.6. That's a nice arrangement. So I'm going to go with that and click OK. And now I've rendered my tree. I'm going to use the Move tool to click and drag on my tree to move it somewhere over to the right a little bit. I'm going to let it just lock to the top of the rectangle there. And because I want this silhouetted, I'm going to change, or I'm going to add I'm going to go to layer and layer style and add a gradient overlay. Not a gradient overlay, pardon me. I'm going to turn that gradient layer over. I'm on a color overlay, and it's already black, set to 91. That's perfect. If you want to set it to 100, you can. Anywhere between 80 and 100, I think, has a good effect. I like around 90. So just so that you can slightly see some color, but it's mostly silhouetted. And I'm going to click OK. Okay. Next, I'm going to create a new layer, and I'm going to call this one Moon. So I double click on layer 1, type in Moon. And in this Moon one, I'm going to bring in that image of the moon. So File, Place Embedded, and I'm going to get my moon. So I click Place. I can just hit OK, or pardon me, Enter, or hit the check mark to commit the transform. Okay, and now I'm going to select out just the moon. I don't want this black background to be showing on this image, so I'm going to mask out the rest of the background. And the way I'm going to do that is I'm going to use my elliptical marquee tool. So it might be in a rectangle when you first look at it, but I'm going to switch to elliptical marquee tool. I'm going to try and make a circle around this moon, but it's really hard to get the right size because it's in the wrong position. So what you can do as you're selecting is hold down Shift to number 1, constrain it to a perfect circle, and then you can hold down spacebar while you're holding down Shift and the mouse button and move where your center point is. Okay, and we want to be slightly inside the moon, not slightly outside the moon, although you want to get as close to the edges as possible. And that looks pretty good, although you don't have to be so precise. You just want to make sure that you don't get any of the black around the outsides. So I'm pretty happy with that selection. And now I'm going to just click on the Create Mask button, Add Layer Mask. So I'm going to click on that, and it's going to mask out all of that black background. This black is from the previous rectangle that we had there. And now I'm going to move my moon over to the left a little bit and a little bit down. So it's just going to be behind the horizon line. I'm going to pull that layer down below the horizon and behind the tree so that it falls to the background. Okay, or just above our white background layer that has the gradient overlay. Now, next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to bring in our dog image. So I'm going to File, pardon me, I'm going to come over here and create a new layer for our dog to land on. Actually, we don't have to do that. It will automatically create a new layer. So File, Place Embedded, and find that picture of the dog, and I'm going to place. So there's the dog. I'm not going to resize it just yet. I'm just going to hit the check mark to confirm that's okay. I'm going to select and mask, and here we've got our mask. I'm already on the overlay layer. You may need to change that from onion skin to marching ants or whichever one, all the way to overlay. So once it's on overlay, we're going to use our quick selection tool and select the dog's ears, his face, down his body to his legs, along his body, down his back legs. Maybe give the computer a second to catch up here. Okay, and now in doing that automatic selection, I notice that I have also selected some background image that I don't want. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to hold down Alt, and you'll see that my cursor changes from plus to a little minus. So now that it's a minus, I can make this red again by clicking and dragging on the parts that I don't want selected. Right along here, there's a little bit of fence line that's coming through that I need to be very careful to make sure to get rid of. And I'm going to also get rid of this little section over here by his ear. And that little section there that's hard to get rid of, I'm really going to rub it down to make sure to get rid of that. I see in here, I'm going to zoom in a little bit. So I hit the Z button, or you can click on the magnifying glass, and then just click a couple times to zoom in. I'm going to switch back to my quick selection tool, and I'm going to add this part along his face that got deselected, and it's tricky because it selects the concrete, so I'm going to remove that concrete part. And I got these lines here that need to be removed. And here. Okay. And now I'm going to add his nose, a little bit of his mouth, making sure that I get the complete image selected. I just hit spacebar to switch to my hand tool, and then I can click and drag to quickly move along my image as I'm selecting here. So spacebar, pull down to the bottom, check to make sure everything looks good. It does. Over here, there's a little tuft of fur that I want to get. There we go. Hit spacebar. Come along here, select under here. Okay, and now I don't want this green part, so what I'm going to do is I'm just going to hold down Alt and click and drag a line. I don't have to go too close to the fur because it knows that I want all that fur from the previous time I went around there. And I'm going to have to come along this line. Yeah, that looks good. I'm holding spacebar, scrolling over here, make sure I get this section of his paw. Looks good. I don't want this section in here, so I'm going to zoom in even further. And with my quick selection on, I'm going to hold down Alt and take this part out. And my size of my mouse is too big, my brush size is too big, so I can change it here, or I can use the left bracket tool to make it bigger, left and right bracket tools to make it bigger and smaller. So I'll make it, oh, I gotta hold Alt and select this part that I don't want. Okay. Okay, not holding Alt, getting the parts that I want of his paw. And now you see in here, there's a lot of fur that I'm not getting, but I'm going to come back to that in a moment once I've got the basic selection done, which it looks like I do. Oh, there's some grass here that I don't want. Take that out. All right, let's zoom back out by pushing Control and hold Control by pushing 0. And that zooms me out to full size. Now that fur, that edge that I want to get, I'm going to turn on edge detection and bring the radius up to about, I don't know, 50. And maybe a little higher than that, 65. Okay, and now I'm going to, oh, there's one little other place that I see a little mistake. I'm going to add this part right here. There we go. And I think that looks really good. I can use my Refine Edge Selection tool to go along the fur and really pick out the fur the same way we did with the lady with the hair. So you can go ahead and do that if you want. I think this looks pretty good, however. So I'm just going to click OK, and there's my dog. I see that I've got a few little artifacts that I can go back into the selected mask to fix up. So I could just hit double click on that, come back in here, and I'm going to switch to my black and white mode so that I can see which ones I need. I'm going to use my straight paint brush tool and holding down Alt, just paint out the stuff that I do not want. Got to be careful though, because some of this fur we do want, but some of these speckled dots we do not want. So for instance, this stuff down here, but you have to be very careful with this one because it will just cut into your image if you're not super careful. Okay, I'm going to click OK, go back out, and this looks much better. Now I'm going to hit Control T to resize my dog and resize him down to a reasonable height. Scroll down a little bit, and I think he looks a little big for how big we want him. There we go. And I'm just going to put him there, hit enter or the check mark to confirm the change on the dog. Next, I'm going to add our girl swinging. So again, we just go up to, oh, I got to rename this layer. Rename it by double clicking on the layer and call it dog. Now I'm going to add my girl, file, place embedded, and find the girl swinging silhouette, place it, and we'll resize it. I'm going to hold shift and pull this down. I need to come outside. If I move my mouse outside of the selection, you see how it turns into those double arrows? I'm going to turn it so I can rotate. And I can drag it in here. I can rotate it somewhere out here. And I just am imagining that I'm going to have a rope coming up to the tree. She's maybe a little big still, so I'm going to make her a little smaller. Bring her up in the air. There we go. And so that rope swing is going to come right up in here and hook onto the tree. And I'm going to click enter to confirm my changes. Okay, so I'm going to create a new layer, call it rope, R-O-P-E, hit enter. And on this rope layer, I'm going to set my brush tool to 8 pixels. So I can just scroll this to 8. If it's hard to adjust that, you might want to use the mouse wheel to just scroll up and down until it says 8 pixels, or you can type it in there. I'm going to set my hardness to 100%. It already is 100%. And I'm going to switch, once I've got my brush set the way I want it, I'm going to switch over to my pen tool. And with the pen tool selected, I'm going to draw a simple path. I need to make sure that my pen tool is set to path and not shape. This is path. Okay, and I'm going to click on the bottom of where the rope swing is going to start. and it's going to come up in here and right up to the tree. Now I'm going to actually take away that one and switch to my freeform pen tool, and I can just add a point in the middle. Whoa, let's undo that. Try this again. I'm going to use my regular pen tool. I'm going to click and drag a little bit, and then click and drag a little bit, and then click and drag a little bit, and that'll make a line that's basically straight, but it has a little bit of a curve to it. And that should be good. Then what I'm going to do is I'm going to click once on the girl, release. Okay, now that I've got my path, I'm just going to right click on it and click fill path. Pardon me, I'm going to click stroke path. Stroke path. And I'm going to change the tool to my brush, because we've already set our brush to being 8 pixels of black. And I'm going to click OK. And there we go. It's a stroke path. Now I can just delete the path by clicking on it with the white arrow and clicking delete. Oh, apparently I have to click on each part separately and delete. Okay, so we've got that rope swing in there. Now let's add stars to the image. So we're going to go up to place embedded, file, place embedded. We're going to try and find our Big Dipper image. I'm going to hit place, and I'm going to move its layer position under the moon, tree, and ground layer so it's blending. Okay, so I'm going to hit OK. I'm going to move its position underneath the moon. There we go. And I'm going to set its blending mode to screen. There it is, screen. Okay, you can see those colors, my gradient colors from the original gradient showing through there. Okay, one thing I just noticed was that I haven't made my dog into a silhouette yet, so I'm going to go to my dog layer. Where are you, dog layer? There it is. And I'm going to go up to layer, layer style, and add a color overlay. And it's going to be that same black, 90% opacity, color overlay. Click OK. There we've got our dog. He's silhouetted. All right, and the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go back to the top and go to File, Place Embedded, and we're going to add some clouds. So click Place. Make these clouds big. Hold down Shift and resize them so that they fill the rest of the screen. Whoops. I'm going to zoom out so I can see what I'm doing here. You can zoom out by pushing Control 0 at the same time. And just like that. Yeah, fill the whole thing and hit Enter. Now this clouds, I don't want it on top of everything. I actually want it to be behind the tree, the girl, and the dog, but in front of the moon, stars, and background sky. So I'm going to pull these clouds down and behind the tree, behind the horizon, but in front of my stars and the moon. And then I'm going to change my blending mode to overlay. Let's try with screen. Nope, definitely want overlay. Okay, and I've noticed here that when I readjusted my star size, I wasn't zoomed out all the way, so my stars don't come all the way to the edge. So I'm going to make my stars come to the edge. I'm going to go into my star layer and Control T to move these up where they need to be. There, something like that looks good. And now I'm going to do one last thing, which is my grass layer. And to do the grass, I'm going to use my paintbrush tool. I'm going to set my brush to a custom brush. So I'm going to go into the adjust size and hardness, and I'm going to go over to this little sprocket, click on that, and go to load brushes. There I'm going to browse to my, it'll be on your U drive in those Moonlight Silhouette in your folder, but I've got mine on my desktop. And I'm going to look for this brushes. I'm going to click load. It's called Charfade's Ultimate Grass Brush Set. And I'm going to click load. And you'll see here in a second that I've got some grass brushes at the bottom. So I can experiment by clicking on different grass sets. And, oh, I need to create a layer for myself to work on. So I'm going to click new layer. It's going to put it at the very top, above rope. And on this very high one, see, I've got some grass that's going to come in. This is too big, so I want my grass to be a little smaller. So let's pull this size way down. Yeah, something like this. And I can paint. Now, I think it's probably better if you use this a little more judiciously than I started there. I'm going to undo that. And, oops, too far. Let's go to my settings here. I want to just go right to where I started with my brush tool. Okay, new layer. And we'll move that layer, and we'll call this layer, oops, call this layer grass. Okay, now I'm going to just click a few times to create some grass. Now I don't want this horizon line to show up hard like it is. I want there to be enough grass that that line, that thick divide kind of disappears. So the way I'm going to do that is I'm going to, you know, click a few times and then sort of color in so that line disappears. I'm going to zoom in to see, so you can see what I'm doing a little easier. I can switch to different types of grass too, you know, some long ones here. Let's make it smaller. Maybe a little bigger. And so we've got blending a variety of different kinds of grass. Switch it again until you just fill up your image with lots of grass. And there is a real temptation to start to just drag and draw grass like that, but I really want you to take your time and stamp these in nicely, switching to a variety of different grass types. Oh, that's too big. Okay, and once you're done that, you'll have an image that looks something like this.